pull up a seat to the EduTable
with Nicole Biscotti and Melissa Sidebotham.
Welcome. We're so glad that you've decided to pull up a seat to the EduTable. I'm Melissa Sidebotham, and I'm here with my good friend Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole Biscotti. The EduTable is a place for parents and educators to share ideas and perspectives. This has become a critical conversation considering what we're all dealing with right now with this pandemic and the impact that it's having on education and on our children. Today we're going to be discussing parenting in a pandemic.
We've brought together a wonderful group of people to have this discussion today. First up, we have Dr. Korb. He is a developmental and behavioral pediatrician, an author, and also a father from California. Hi, Dr. Korb.
Good evening. How are you tonight?
Doing great. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, like was mentioned, I'm an author. I wrote a book called Raising an Organized Child, and I have found that has been remarkably applicable to what we're going through these days, having our kids home with us. I recently wrote 2 articles that are out there right now that are getting a lot of attention. One called Parenting in a Pandemic, and the other one, Working, Parenting, and While Sheltering in Place, Tips to Reduce Frustration and Get Some Work Done. So it's talking about how can we be organized and how can we keep our kids supported through this difficult process.
Well, I'm so glad that you've been able to join us here this evening because I know that you're going to be able to help us and help us walk through a lot of the situations that we're seeing. Next up, I've got Tiffany, and she is a mom of 3 from California. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm a stay-at-home mom of 3. I have a 14-year-old daughter who's in 9th grade in high school. I have a 5th grader and a 2nd grader, both in Catholic elementary school. So we're learning at home all on Zoom right now.
I think a lot like most of the country right now. I think we're all experiencing some of those same pain points. Well, Tiffany, I'm so glad that you're able to join us tonight. And the last but not least person on our panel is Tennille. She is a mom of 2 boys and also an educator in California. Tennille, welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello. Yes, I'm excited to do my first podcast. I am a first grade teacher in San Jose, California. This is my 20th year. I also have 2 boys, one in 9th grade and one in 8th grade, both at private school. So I am juggling getting through this, worried and concerned about my own students and making sure that my boys are doing what they're supposed to. So, like you said, we're all in this new situation together.
Thank you guys for being here today, and really today more than ever, because we know that all of you are stretched more than normally. We're all under a lot of pressure and dealing with new duties and having to take on even our own children's education. So thank you for making the time to be here. The first question I have for you is, what are the challenges that parents are feeling in our current crisis? And I'd like to direct that towards Dr. Korb, if I could.
Well, I think one way to look at this is when parents heard that we were going to be sheltered in place, I think they all said to themselves, oh my gosh, what am I going to do to get my work done? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do to manage my children? How am I going to take care of everyone? And your kid said, woohoo, it's vacation. I'm going to sit on the couch all day, and I'm going to play video games, and I'm going to stay up late, and I'm going to sleep in, and it's going to be wonderful. And that sets up a mismatch in expectations. And whenever you have mismatch in expectations, that's when frustration creeps in, because one parent expects one outcome and the child expects a different outcome. And at some point, there's going to be a clash. And so what I'm encouraging parents to do is to set those limits and set those expectations from the get-go to make not only the process go more smoothly, but reintegration back into society when that soon happens in the future.
That's really insightful. I think that you did a great job of kind of hitting the nail on the head, Dr. Korb. It really does come down to our expectations because as parents, we're adults and we're feeling more pressed than ever because we still know that we have to pay our bills and go on with our normal responsibilities, and we're grappling with how. Whereas kids, you're right, my kids are definitely feeling like spring break is just never ending. Tiffany, what do you feel like the challenges to parents are in the current crisis?
Well, for me right now, I've had a lot of anxiety myself just about the whole pandemic. And I think for me, it's been balancing like educating myself on the situation and helping the kids to have a healthy balance of feeling safe and secure while at home, but also having a healthy fear of like not doing the wrong thing. Like, for instance, we did a family bike ride around the block, and my son hopped off his bike and ran up to his friend that he saw who was in his driveway. And my husband, wait, you can't do that. So, they need to understand it without me completely freaking them out because I've had a lot of anxiety and I don't want to put that on them.
Yes, and I think that that's a really big concern for a lot of parents that none of us have lived through something of this scale. So we're grappling with going into supermarkets and not seeing meat and toilet paper and all of these concerns and looking at the counts and all this. But yet we want to shelter our kids, but at the same time teach them about social distancing and
Right. So just finding that balance for the kids, that's just one thing that came to mind.
definitely. And also staying balanced in parenting, because I don't know about your kids, but I know my kids know the minute I'm off in any way, there's they can tell that and they'll react differently to me.
Right.
So just kind of keeping that balance as well. Thank you, Tiffany. Tennille, what do you feel that the challenges to parenting are right now?
I think for our family, the family who's always on the go, running from one activity to the other activity, is just really understanding like we are all home all day long, 24 hours. So we need to have and create those times where each of us has our like alone time, whether that be my son out in the backyard playing basketball, if it means me going out for my run and getting my workout in first thing in the morning, my husband just going to Starbucks by himself. Those are those moments that, because we were used to having so much, time and just connecting in the evening, that now it's a whole new adjustment for all of us. And we have to be mindful too, I think, because everyone's on Zoom, really understanding each other's schedules and who's taking a call or what time's my next meeting, or you guys, I need it absolutely quiet during this time. Like, don't come out of your room. So it's just really managing schedules and just everybody being really understanding.
That's an interesting point, Tennille, because prior to this, we would leave and go to work, most of us. And now we're sort of having our work day with our kids while they're trying to have school. So it is in close quarters. So it is definitely challenging. Thank you for that perspective.
Well, let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit into our next question. I know that we've all been dealing with this for about a week and a half. What kinds of things have you found that work and what doesn't work for you? Dr. Korb, could you go ahead and jump in?
Well, I would start with routines. I think a typical child's life is very routine. They wake up, they get dressed, they eat breakfast, they go to school, they move from class to class to class with some breaks for exercise in between. They come home, they eat a snack, they do homework, and do some after school activities. There's a routine built into their day. And now that we're home, all of a sudden those routines are messed up. And when routines get messed up, people get anxious. Uncertainty becomes anxiety provoking. And so anything you can do to stabilize your child's routine will not only reduce anxiety, but improve your child's behavior. So you can put those routines into place. You can have wake up times and bedtime still. You can have time for learning, time for exercise, time for meals, time for free play, time for being creative and imaginative, time for connecting with the family, and build that into a routine that can differ depending on the age of your child, but a routine that gives a structure to get them through each day.
I think that that's really, really key. And being able to stick to a routine can sometimes be tricky for certain parents, especially if they're still expected to work full time and they don't get to have those breaks. What would you say to parents that are in that kind of situation?
This to me again.
Yes, yes, Dr.
So,
Korb.
it really depends on the child's age. So one of the things I wrote about in the article, working parenting and sheltering in place, is for infants and toddlers. What you might do is very different than what you might do for school age children and teens.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
they all have a structure. For infants and toddlers, the key is stations. Have multiple stations in your house, and you rotate them from station to station every 10 or 15 minutes or however long their attention lasts. And that way, there's always something ahead of them. There's always something for them to do. The other thing is to be present with your little ones, because sometimes just saying, "Oh, what are you doing?" or "Oh, nice job," sustains their attention to a task. It's tempting to go in
Hmm.
the other room and get your work done, but they'll actually stay on an activity longer if you're near them. When you have a school age child, they want more control. So starting to think about within that structure, how can they have options? How can they make lists of things to do within their routines? And for teenagers, I like to give them goals. I like to say things like, because they want to be independent, I like to say things like, hey, we're going to be home for the next few weeks or months. We're not sure how long, but what do we want to come out of this with? What goals should we set? And then your job as a parent is to help them kind of scaffold or to plan out what they need to accomplish in order to reach the goal that your child set for themselves.
Excellent. I love how you were able to break that down so well for each individual age group. That's super helpful. Now, Tiffany, given what you've been experiencing for the past week and a half, what have you found has been working and what has not been working at your house?
It's been going pretty smoothly. It's mainly just been working because we have all the kids separate. So Taylor, my daughter, stays up in her room, and she does her classes. She's the one in high school. She does everything in her room. My middle son goes in the office, and he does his Zoom classes there, and he works pretty independently. And I just kind of make sure that he's on task and turning things in, and that's been fine. My second grader, I have to sit with. So he gets on Zoom, he does his class, and we work at the kitchen table. So everybody has their own quiet space, and everyone knows when someone is on a Zoom, don't come in the room because it's too distracting. So that's just been one rule I put. I'm still struggle with scheduling and having that structure when it becomes, when they're off Zoom and it's time just to manage for my younger one. He needs more breaks. He has a lot of wiggles to get out. So um, that's probably one of my bigger struggles. But I think it's been working pretty well. I feel like the schools have done a great job of keeping the kids on task and giving them enough to keep learning, progressing.
Fantastic. And I know just hopping into my own teachers' Zoom meetings with their students, uh, there inevitably you're going to have a sibling or a cat that does a little photo bomb and walks in front of the camera. And I think that it's also important for teachers and for parents and for students to give each other a little bit of wiggle room with that.
Yeah.
Because this is an unusual situation, but I love how you're setting up that structure and the expectations. Uh, and have you noticed because you're having all of your different aged students on Zoom and you're talking a lot about the academics. How are they dealing with the emotional piece of this through their schooling?
They have been fine. We talked about it last night. I asked all of them how they were feeling about this, like how it's impacting them. And honestly, they enjoy not having the usual hustle bustle that we always keep with all the activities And just being home and being together, I feel like this has kind of brought a sense of calm to them because they don't have to keep the schedule that we usually do. And, we have a big commute for my daughter's school. So that is a strain on the whole family. And I think everyone's just kind of enjoying it, not having to wake up so early in the morning. She wakes up at 5:30 to get to school, and the boys wake up at like 6:45. So they love being able to sleep until 7 or 7:30. And then they naturally wake up, but just waking up naturally versus being yanked out of bed because you have to get ready and go has been nice for them. So I think they're okay. I don't know. I mean, sorry.
It is hard to tell, but I think that you bring up a lot of interesting points. I think that all of us are finding that this whole situation is putting a different perspective on the lives we used to live.
Yes.
And maybe making us think a little bit differently about those schedules and things.
Yes, absolutely.
Tennille, let's go ahead and hear from you about what's working and what's not working in your world.
Can I just piggyback on something that Tiffany said? I think it's really important that the schools do address that social and emotional need. And I feel like with my one child, I felt like they just jumped right in to the academics and they started assigning and didn't really have that check-in with like, hey, how are you feeling? Or, what is your day now consist of? And it was kind of disappointing, to be honest. It's just like our kids they're losing a lot right now. My son's missing out on his Washington, D.C. trip. They might not have graduation. And those are big milestones for kids that have looked forward to these events since, kindergarten. And so for them, I think, they do need to have those conversations with our students. So that was something that I just, I feel like that's our job as educators, principals, superintendents, is really to open up that conversation.
Tennille,
right. And I think, go ahead, Nicole.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say that Tennille really moved the conversation right into the next question, really, where we wanted to explore what is it that kids need from us right now? Because obviously, of course, every child is different and has different needs. But in general, as parents and as educators, we're always trying to support kids and make sure that we're giving them what they need. But under these circumstances, what do they need? What do you perceive as what most kids are needing right now, Dr. Korb?
I think their needs are on different levels. So on the one level, they need protection, protection from all the media that's out there. They need protection from just germs and their overall health. And then they need comfort to know that they're going to be okay. So we support them. We don't catastrophize. We try not to point fingers and blame. We describe the situation as it is and try to be as calm and natural as we are about it. And if that's difficult for us, I'm not sure. I think it was Tiffany earlier who mentioned that she's feeling anxiety. And I think it's important for us to all be mindful of our own feelings and stop and slow down and think about what we actually are in control of and focus on those things. Slow down and think about the moment, what I can smell and what I can hear and what I can see and what I can taste right now, because those things can bring you back to the present. On another level, I think kids need structure. So like I was talking about, they need routines. They also need limits and boundaries. The same kind of structure you'd apply to your child in any situation. The same rules apply about electronics that you would normally have in your house. The same rules about bedtimes and the same rules about the language that they use. That kind of structure is comforting to kids, even though the older they get, they're going to rattle and shake a little bit to see if those structures stand up. But that's what they need, I think, in order to feel comforted through the situation.
That's really excellent and very grounding advice, because it's true, Dr. Korb. Most of us are feeling like Tiffany was expressing. I would say most of us are feeling some level of anxiety right now this is a situation that we haven't lived through, and we're still in the middle of it. We don't know the outcome. But yet within that, we're human beings, but we're also parents. And we want to make sure that we're providing our children with what they need. So I appreciate you bringing it down to sort of different categories, that there's structure, there's the need for comfort, there's a need for protection, and they just look a little different now than they might have a few weeks ago or a month ago. So thank you. Tiffany, what do you feel like is what your kids need right now from you?
I think more than ever, just my time and attention and love and support. I feel like, there's three of them here, and so my time is divided between the three of them, and my husband is working from home in addition. So he's upstairs working. I just think right now I'm just supporting everyone how I can, each child in their schooling or their emotional needs, or, I guess that's kind of like, the mom role, you just do everything. I think that's the number one thing right now is they just need my time and attention, love and support.
And I feel like as a mother also that one of the blessings that I've experienced during this tragedy is that I've had more time with my kids. I'm a teacher and I spend a lot of time plugged into other kids' educational needs, but I feel like I'm getting a better sense of where my kids are at that I wouldn't have had normally. So this family time has been very bonding and comforting, and definitely a blessing as well. Tennille, what do you feel like is what kids are needing from your kids need from you right now?
Well, once again, building off of your last point is, I think this was our way of like slowing down and really being in the moment. And as a mom, as a working mom, to be able to be home and make home cooked meals for my family, it's been a blessing. It really, truly has. Normally when we're at dance and basketball and meetings, I mean, sometimes we're not getting home till 9:30 at night. So just to have this family time, I think has been huge for us. I think one of the issues that I see my two boys missing is their activities. My one son does dance and my other is basketball. So, that's another huge loss for so many of our children that have those extracurricular activities. Like they're doing their best of trying to stream stuff online, but it's just not the same for them. So those social connections with their peers, they're doing it now even more so, Snapchat, Instagram, to have that social connection. So I'm not being as strict with their phone right now because I know that's their only outlet. So some leeway there.
Yes, I've thought a lot about that myself with my kids, the impact, my students, I teach high school, and then also my kids at home. I have one in college, and it's very hard to get him to not socialize. And then, the ones that are home and that I can control more, they are really missing their friends and missing that social component of school that's so important for kids.
And I think it's actually pretty interesting too, and we just did our last podcast on this, because our kids are missing out on those activities where they were in water polo or they were doing dance or basketball or all of those different things, and they don't have access to that. They do seem to have a little bit more time to pursue interests that they find near and dear to themselves. And I think I posted on Twitter earlier today about how my middle daughter, she came up to me and she said, "Hey, Mom, can I try and make homemade pasta?" And I turned around in the kitchen and I said, "What?" and she's like, "No, I saw it on TikTok. I really want to learn how to do that." And I said, "You saw that on TikTok? I thought TikTok was all just silly dances." And, of course she called me a boomer and we called that a day. But I think that it's interesting that our kids are able to take a look at different things that might interest them and pursue that instead of some of those other activities that they normally would have. So I think it's an interesting opportunity that is there for them. So let's go ahead and shift into our next question. And how do you think this experience that we're going through collectively, not just as a nation, but as the world, how do you think this experience is going to be transformative of our parenting moving forward? Dr. Korb, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the experience is going to be a very individual on some levels. Some of us are going to know people that get sicker, and some of us are going to know people that don't make it through this. And for those families, that experience is going to be very different than it is for other families. I do think, though, this is hopefully will be an opportunity for the world to kind of connect and see how we're all are interconnected. And this brings to mind not just how can we be safe in terms of illnesses and the spread of disease, but what can we do to protect our environment? What can we do about gun violence? All these things of how we all really are truly related, and not just taking care of ourselves and sequestering our own toilet paper in our house while everybody else runs out. We have to learn to all work together as much as possible. I also think, following on your thread about social media and computers, we are all learning that we can learn online. At least many people can learn online. It's hard for some, I'm sure, but there's going to be new opportunities for reaching out and connecting with people through education. I'm seeing a lot of patients online right now. There's different ways that we can connect with each other that I think my older generation is learning, and maybe the young kids already know about.
I think that's very true. And the longer this goes on, the more we are going to have to explore those avenues so that we can keep that sense of connectedness, because I think that's going to be so important for all of our kids. Tiffany, how do you feel like this experience is transforming or will transform your parenting moving forward?
Um, Sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, no problem. I was just going
Sorry.
to ask, how do you think this
Oh,
experience that we're
okay.
all going through will transform your parenting moving forward?
Hopefully, it will just help us all to slow down a little bit. I think there's a lot of things. I think it will create more compassion between other people. One thing that we've kind of talked about as a family is how this exact situation is affecting other people. Like for us as a family, it's been nice to reconnect, but my parents are isolated. They haven't seen anybody. They're the two of them in their house. My father in law is by himself in his house, and they haven't been able to see anybody. Um, so that, I'm asking the kids, what do you think about the situation? How do you feel for them? My middle son had his birthday. He also missed going to science camp. So, he wasn't feeling sorry for himself. He was just kind of discussing it. He took it better than I thought he would with all missing all those things. But we just asked him, like, how do you think it feels for your grandparents that are really alone? So I think a lot of compassion will come out of this, I hope, and appreciation for when they do get to do all the things that they had to miss out on right now.
Very, very true. And I think that another conversation that seems to come up a lot is, this for those of us who are younger and we're healthier, maybe we're not staying home for ourselves necessarily, but we should be doing this for people who are at risk, and people that we care about who could fall prey to this virus. And I think it brings about interesting conversations about caring about others rather than only ourselves. Tennille, how about you? How do you think this is going to transform your parenting moving forward?
Well, my husband and I had this conversation, like, it's been so nice having this time together. How can we maintain this? Like, having the family dinners because of once we go back to our crazy schedules, like, how can we now make time for these family hikes or baking together? It's just as sad as it is, I do feel like for our family, there is some good, and it's really just appreciating one another. So I just like it's affecting so many people, and it's so hard. But we got to stay positive. We have to look for the good in these situations.
That's very true. I think it is always going to be important for us to be able to try and find that silver lining, while not negating those feelings and those anxieties and fears that might bubble up, but always trying to move through them if at all possible, and asking for help when we're feeling overwhelmed is also important, I should say.
Absolutely. I wanted to kind of go through and ask each of you if you had any kind of final thoughts about parenting in this situation, or questions, or things that we didn't address so far. Dr. Korb, if you could start first.
I think it's important to recognize that everybody's experience is going to be very different. There's some single parents that have to work and have to figure out how to take care of their two children at the same time. There's going to be families who really struggle, and the stress for some families is going to be really high. We know that when stress goes up in families, domestic abuse goes up, and the last thing we want to do is hurt somebody we care about. And so people need to be thinking proactively about what are the ways that they can have outlets to take care of themselves when they're having stress. It's really important. Can they lock up their guns to make sure that the most dangerous things are out of harm's way, so that everybody can get through their own experience of this pandemic however they need to in a safe way?
Yes, I think that that's a really good thing to bring out, is that not every family is really set up to have added stress. A lot of families are already at their breaking point, or already really stretched financially, or in terms of, um, one person filling all the roles. So that this is definitely a huge stressor on top of maybe already situations that are existing. Um, also wanted to ask Tiffany, what do you feel like are your final thoughts about this, or questions?
I think just it kind of teaches you the lesson to you need to remain open to change. You never know when your comfortable situation is gonna completely switch up, and the whole family dynamics are different. The way you learn's different. The way you work's different. So just being fluid and open to trying different ways of things. It's good for the kids, I guess, and just a lesson. I don't know.
It is a lesson, and it's like we've mentioned before also in this conversation, an opportunity for reflection and looking at how maybe we can do things differently moving forward. And Tennille, what final thoughts do you have for us about parenting in this situation?
So, from a parenting perspective, I feel um, like we're going to get through this from my family. Now, when I put my teacher hat on, that's where I worry. I do have families that are working 2 and 3 jobs. I have families that don't have access to technology. I have families who don't even have the internet. I have families who will be struggling to put food on the table, families who might get evicted. There are so many factors. That's where I have my anxiety, is I'm worrying about 24 other little kids that I love, and I have not been able to connect with them. I mean, I've called them, but their joy is coming to school every day and being with me and being with their friends. And I know it's hard for them and their families. And so I have to figure out a way to connect with them. Um, it's just so hard. And that's where it hurts my heart, is I know that my community at school right now is struggling.
And
Yes.
I think those things bring up so many strong points for all of us. I mean, not only are we worried about, our own families, but also our communities around us, and as educators, the communities that we serve. And so what I'd like to ask is what are you doing to take care of yourself? Because I know that as caregivers, we oftentimes take care of everybody else around us, and sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves. So, Dr. Korb, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing to take care of yourself and what you might suggest others do as well?
For me, that question is easy because about a month ago, I had a couple discs in my back that are bulging, started bulging, and so I've been spending a lot of time in bed. This has given me the opportunity to rest. I was at the point at work where I wasn't able to sit and I was standing all day. And so this has given me the much needed respite that I need to heal and get better during this process. And so, it's hard to translate my message to everyone else, but, you got to figure out what you need as individuals and make sure you give yourself that. If it wasn't my bulging back, I would be exercising all the time because to have this much available time uh, would be to do the thing I love the most, which is to exercise. So we have to find what works for each of us.
Very true, very true. And I'm glad that you've been able to take the time to rest, and I hope you're able to get back to exercising very soon. Tiffany, what are you doing to take care of yourself while you're trying to take care of everybody in your family?
Um, Mainly running, running first thing in the morning. And then we set up our garage like many of our neighbors have to be able to do workouts. And my kids enjoy doing fun things like that. So, just we're all able to get out and do bike rides and different things. So I think the physical part for me it helps to get that stress out. And the morning run with friends is nice to just, start the day off just on a good note, and helps me think clearly and lower the anxiety and feel happy for the day. So that's my main thing. It just starts off early in the morning, right? And then it makes the whole day go better.
That's fantastic. How about you, Tennille? What are you doing to take care of yourself?
Well, I've made a goal for myself. I've always heard how good yoga is. And I guess I've always made those excuses like I don't have time or I'm too tired. But I've committed through this whole shelter in place is really to get my mind right and focus on my breathing. And so every day so far, I've committed to doing my evening yoga.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you were able to find a new interest and something to support you, because I know it was mentioned earlier that as moms and as dads, we feel like we have to always fill in all the needs and provide all the support because, well, that's what we do, but we can't run on empty. And as we're slowing down and having more family time, it's really important to take care of ourselves because we can't continue to give if we're not ourselves feeling well. I know personally I've started getting more active. I was wanting to, and in the summers I do a great job of that, but once school starts and things get hectic, I tend to not take care of myself as much. And it's really been nice, especially with the weather being beautiful, to have that time outdoors to exercise while I'm social distancing, of course. I want to thank you all for pulling up a seat and being part of our show today. Again, particularly given what's going on right now, thank you for taking the time. Please reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram at the EduTable. We would love to hear from all of you who are listening. Also, please remember to check out the articles and videos on our website at theedutable.com and to go ahead and subscribe so that we can deliver all of this right to your inbox. Thank you for listening, and remember that children always benefit when parents and educators work together.